One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. Let's talk for a few minutes why it has taken me until the year 2025 to finally read The Lord of the Rings. Now, I know for some people that sentence alone will be enough to click off this video and cast me out. I'm sorry. I know that it's kind of sacrilege, especially for somebody who loves fantasy, sci-fi, anything imaginative. The Lord of the Rings is definitely the grandfather of modern fantasy. So when I was a kid, growing up in the 90s, I am dating myself a little bit there, around third grade, my teacher, my homeroom teacher, kind of put two and two together and realized I really had a wild imagination, and she wanted to introduce me to fantasy. Because I loved books, I loved reading. A lot of it was history, a little bit of fiction mixed in, Goosebumps, things like that. So she recommended I read The Chronicles of Narnia, and I was blown away. I started with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and it amazed me. It was medieval fantasy with fantastical creatures and powers, swords and shields, wars, the whole nine yards. As a young guy, that was amazing to me. And then I found out there's even more books, and it's this whole series, and it opened up a whole new avenue for me. So after reading that, the natural progression of things obviously is going to work into The Lord of the Rings. Now, unfortunately, because of things that were happening at a certain point in my life, The Lord of the Rings was not something that I was able to get my hands on. It wasn't something that I was really allowed, in a sense, to partake in. And then a few years later, the movies start coming out, and that is even more interest of like, man, I really want to read these books. I want to see what The Lord of the Rings is all about. It wasn't going to happen at that point in my life, and I had to accept that. So fast forward even further to I'm roughly 17, 18 years old, and I finally sit down and I get to watch the Lord of the Rings movies, the trilogy. Extended versions, all 12 and a half hours of them. So amazing. Still to this day, my favorite movie trilogy that's ever been made. And every year, I watch Lord of the Rings at some point during the year. It's mandatory. Every single year. Been doing it since I was a teenager. Love the movies. Now, the problem is, you would think, like, why don't you just jump into the books? You love the movies, finally read the books. You can now dive into it. Around the time that I watched Lord of the Rings and fell in love with the movies, I went through a period of my life where I wasn't really reading that much. An occasional book here or there, but my priorities were just not where they should have been. And I wasn't into the reading habit at the time. And that makes me very sad. Thankfully, that time is over. But yeah, the interest to read the books wasn't there anymore. That drive to learn more about the stories and delve deeper into that world wasn't there at the time. So it went on for probably another, 7, 8 years before I rediscovered my love and passion for reading. Well, after 7 or 8 years of watching The Lord of the Rings every single year and falling in love with the movies, over that course, suddenly reading The Lord of the Rings became kind of daunting. It was this weird imaginary pressure that I was placing on myself where, is it too late? Have I watched the movies to the point where it's going to ruin the books for me? Because I know they're very different. I know there are characters in the books that aren't in the movies. I know there are sequences and world building that the movies just don't have the time to cover. Am I going to find The Lord of the Rings boring? That can't happen. I can't be the person who says they're a huge fan of The Lord of the Rings and then say that I found the books boring. It became this weird fear. It's this psychological game that I was playing with myself, and it caused anxiety, and I just kept, out of fear, pushing off the books and pushing off the books and pushing off the books. And I remember one time I was like, you know what, let's start from the very beginning. I'll read the Silmarillion, The Hobbit, and then The Lord of the Rings, and that's not how you should be introduced to this world, in my opinion. I got halfway through the Silmarillion and I was thoroughly confused. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. This book reads very strangely. I don't know any of these characters. It was not the way to do it. And it further made me anxious about reading Lord of the Rings because I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to like it. And I can't be that person. So yeah, it turned into this weird just bout of anxiety every time I thought about it. And I own the full collection. I actually love these books. They're beautiful. They're gorgeous. I picked them up over the years. I now own 2 or 3 sets of Lord of the Rings. So there's a little bit of pretentiousness going on there. I own the books. I just haven't read them yet. I'm like, well, maybe I should start with The Hobbit. Everybody says it's a good place to start. I just kept putting it off and putting it off. And I don't know, maybe you've experienced the same thing. Maybe you've also had anxiety about not reading a book or a series of books and people pressure you about it, or you make believe the pressure's there when maybe it's not, and it just turns into anxiety and you push it off more. But finally, towards the end of 2024, I was like, you know what? I've got to do it. Enough time has passed. I can't keep struggling with this. I can't let the fear overtake me. I can't let the anxiety win. I'm going to do it. I'm going to read them. And my fiance, even though she's read the books, says she will reread them because she's also a huge Lord of the Rings nut. She will reread them with me so we can discuss the books and really take our time and enjoy it together. Her reliving this world that she loves and me really delving into it for the first time outside of the movies. And I'm not very far into it. I'm taking my time. I'm on chapter 4. Just started in January. I'm reading it very slowly. I'm trying to absorb the world building, absorb the characters, really get into just the minds of Frodo and Sam and Gandalf, and really try to picture that relationship from a new lens. I'm trying to push the movies out of my mind and experience this like it's a brand new tale to me. And it's just been so fascinating. Just the 4 chapters in, and I already am like so in love with what I'm reading. And I'm so happy that I finally put everything aside and now I'm entering this world. So I think what the goal for me is, I'm going to take probably not the whole year, but I'm going to take this year. 2024 will be the year of Tolkien. It's going to be the year of Lord of the Rings and probably The Hobbit as well. And I'm going to take my time, read through these books, and talk about them, talk with you about them. I'll rewatch the movies again at some point, maybe even twice this year, just because I'm watching Rings of Power as well. And just really let it be the year of Tolkien and the year of Lord of the Rings. And just what a beautiful story this is turning out to be already. And we're barely getting started. So yeah, that's kind of my history with Lord of the Rings and why it's taking me so long. Just make-believe fantasy and anxiety that I put on myself for no reason other than not wanting to be that guy. So I hope it's at least kind of enjoyable to hear my nonsense. And again, maybe if you are struggling with getting into a series, maybe also you want to read Lord of the Rings for the first time, but you don't want to openly admit that. Hopefully I can start that process to know it's okay. It's okay. There's no timeline for any of this. Read it at your own pace. Enjoy it when you're ready to enjoy it. And if you never get around to it, you don't have to feel guilty about it. But if you are on the fence or you are nervous about it, do what I'm doing. Start it, but take your time. I'm reading other books as I read Lord of the Rings. And it's not to disengage from this story. It's just these stories so far have been so dense in a good way that when I'm here, I want to stay here. I want to enjoy it. But it doesn't need to be something that I read constantly. So I'm kind of breaking it up. And I'm just, again, taking my time, taking it slow, taking in each chapter, each piece, each detail, each location. And already, I mean, if you've seen the movies, you know what the Nazgul are. How the Black Riders are described in this book are so much more different than the movies. And personally, I like this better. Nothing against the movies. I'm just saying it's so much creepier how Tolkien describes the first encounter with the Nazgul, and I just can't get enough of it. But yeah, hopefully I can break that cycle for you of putting things off, and if you want to get into it, get into it. Read it, take your time, don't let people pressure you. Don't let that fake pressure bully you. Don't let you bully yourself. And yeah, just explore the new worlds, especially Lord of the Rings, and don't let the anxiety or fear control you. What are you reading? What's a book series you want to read but you're scared to? I think this is a safe space that you can tell us in the comments, or if you want to find me on Instagram and the Fable Readers app. I am JR Frost Reads, same as the YouTube channel, and let's talk about it a little bit. I have no shame in this now that it's out there and it's out in the open. Yeah, I'm reading this for the first time in 2025. What are you waiting for? Let me know. I'll catch you in the next video.